talk today about PowerShell and how to use help in it. It's really important that you understand how to find the knowledge and the ability to use different PowerShell commands, or as they're referred to as cmdlets. I could walk you through everything. You can go download people's scripts and try to break them apart. But there's an old adage that says, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Unless you're in my case, I don't like fish, and well, it's just a pastime. Sorry, bad humor. Anyway, PowerShell here. We're going to talk about how to learn how to understand all these commands. And I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint. I don't really like to do death by PowerPoint, but I've tried doing these videos a few different ways, and I ultimately came to the conclusion it worked a lot better to kind of have PowerPoint guide me and then show my examples in a terminal or a programming window. Otherwise, you spent way too much time staring at a little tiny terminal. And the video was really difficult to follow. So I apologize beforehand, but I've made this decision to use PowerPoints, then jump back and forth. I want you to notice that right now I'm using a Ubuntu box. I'm going to be demoing my stuff on PowerShell there. Everything I do will definitely work in Windows, but I'm doing it here in Linux often just to show that PowerShell is fully available to people in Linux. The community is growing out there, and I want to bring attention to the fact that this powerful programming language, the scripting language, is available in more than just Windows. And a lot of my videos I'll switch back and forth between a Windows box and a Linux box, but in this one I'm just going to stay completely in the Linux box. The only difference you're going to have when you do this on a Windows is you're going to have more options. There'll be more things available to you, more commandlets, more commands. All right, so the very first thing we want to do is make sure our get-help is up to date. Get-help is the command you will use to pull back help pages. If you're familiar with Bash, they're usually referred to as the man pages. You use man to pull back the explanation of how something works in Bash. You use get-help in PowerShell. And the first thing we want to do is we want to update. And because you want to have the latest documentation. PowerShell is constantly evolving and growing, and so the documentation will change as new capabilities are added. So the first way you do that is you need to get onto your terminal. If you've already installed PowerShell on your system, it's as simple as going in pwsh. That starts your PowerShell terminal, and you can see ps/root. PS is the way you'll always recognize you're in PowerShell. If you're on Windows and you're on your terminal, you'll see if you don't have that PS, you're not in PowerShell. I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to type get. I'm going to do an update help. If I press enter, nothing happens. That's because I already updated it. If I didn't update it, I'd get a little status bar across the bottom and it would download the latest version of PowerShell help. But I've already done that, so just make sure that you take the time to update your helps that you're running with the latest documentation. So let's talk about get-help. A military term, RTFM. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. Read the friendly manual. Often you'll have questions. The best way, nobody always wants to be told, go read the manual. But in reality, the best way to learn PowerShell is to get familiar with the get-help command. With the get-help command, you can diagnose, you can look at all of the features available to you about that PowerShell commandlet. And so I highly recommend that you start using get-help. And the basic syntax is get-help, and then you put the commandlet. It also has the ability to use wildcarding. And so let's just show that with wildcards here. If I press get-help, and I do a star, it's going to come back with every PowerShell command and alias term that I can use. I'm not gonna let it run the whole way. I'm gonna Control C to stop that. But that's a really quick way to look for a commandlet. Sometimes you don't actually, I tell people, I've taught this class many times, I tell people that get-help is not just about getting the help. It's also a great way to search for a commandlet. Say I'm looking for a commandlet to deal with JSON. I could actually type get help star JSON star. And now I see I have 3 commandlets: convert from JSON, test JSON, convert to JSON. What about, I want to know how to deal with XML. I can see that there are 6 different results coming back for commands for running XML. You can do other things such as get help, put the wildcard on at the beginning, get the wildcard at the end. So I want to know everything that starts a commandlet with get. Oops, it helps if you don't put double hyphens. Those are all of my get commandlets. I'm hoping you're seeing a little pattern here. Commandlets are the little scripts that PowerShell uses to execute things, and they follow a verb noun concept. I've got get retrieve stuff. I had convert, get help, convert. And we can see convert JSON, convert CSV, convert HTML, convert secure string, etc. And so they follow a very similar, you're gonna have the same verb, they have a very small package of verbs that they use, and then a whole bunch of nouns. And you can search through this stuff using this. It's a really great feature to find stuff. Examples, get help set, you can do star dash item, wildcard loc, anything like that. All of those are legit options. But the basic syntax for get help is it's get help, and then in these little squirrely brackets, you're not going to put the squirrely brackets, it's just say that requires some user input, put a commandlet name in there. And so let's do that. I'm going to actually get help. I've done this before, but let's do get help on get help. And when I do that, I get back the documentation for get help. And you can sit there and read how to use it. There are some other things I want to make really clear before we move on. Please, while you're using PowerShell, recognize the up and down keys. If you've spent a lot of time in Bash, I hope you already know this, but if I press up, I get the last command I read. I press again, it will just go right through my history. Up and down, I can pull back the memory of all the commands I've run. The other thing is, you'll notice, I don't know how well it's going to show up in my Ubuntu box here. It's actually got a small grayed out text of suggested things you could type. That's really nice. You can also tab complete, and it will give you all the options. It's just like when you're in Bash, you've got tab completion. It will save you a lot of time. If you're going to be writing in PowerShell, you do not want to be writing all of these words out. And so please learn up, down, tab complete, fill out this auto completion using tab. It's going to save you a lot of time. All right, now come the meat and potatoes, the really, buckle in. We're going to cover it a few times, but get help. Let's explain how this works. And we're going to just use get help on the get help command. Let's clear the screen so I can make sure that I don't have to, I won't have anything. I can go all the way to the top. What we'll notice is it starts out, gives us a name of the command. It gives us a little synopsis. It displays information about PowerShell commands and concepts, and then gives us a whole bunch of different ways to use it. And usually the most common way is up at the top, down to the least common. But there are many different ways to call out this command. And I'm going to walk you through how to understand how to read this syntax piece. It is a little bit difficult, but once you get it, it will make your life so much easier. And so you'll notice we've got brackets, these little tacks or dashes. I'm going to refer to them as tacks. And you've got little carets and stuff like that. The big thing I want you to focus on right off is brackets. And if you're anything like me, if you see a whole bunch of things put inside brackets, and then my brain just kind of blocks it out. I'm like, oh, I don't want to read that. It gets complicated, and that's the way I remember it. What you've got, here's your commandlet, and these are all the values, parameters you can add to it. If it's in a bracket, think about your brain. I don't want to read this. That means it's optional. You do not need to use this parameter. If you do not have to do it, you can go, it's not required. If it's not in a bracket, and we'll show some other examples where there are things that are not in brackets, and those must be included. They're parameters that must be included. And if you don't, it will actually prompt you, please provide me a value for this parameter. But anything in bracket can be ignored. It's not required. It's just an optional. You'll notice that usually there are small exceptions. The values, they come in pairs. This is the parameter name. This is the parameter value. And so the get-help is looking for a name and a system string. You can ignore that whole system part. It's just looking for a string. And basically what it's looking for is a commandlet. And we can put one in, and we do. When we said get help, and then we put the parameter get help in there, and it gave us back our value. Now, what you'll notice is, as they said, they come in pairs. Here we've got a category, and then this little squiggly bracket here says these are all the options that can be supplied, but these are the values. Parameter name, parameter value. Parameter name, parameter value. Parameter name, parameter value. Common parameters, those are will be on they're common, and it's just a way of dictating. There are a certain set of things that will always come with every commandlet. It's out of the scope of this discussion, but so basically they come in pairs. And so now that we know they're in pairs, this pair happens to be in brackets as well. Again, every time we see brackets, we just say, oh, my brain doesn't like it. I can't think about this. Don't want to pay attention to it. So you do not need to call out the parameter name. That's why when I write get help and I write some name like get help, I did not need to put this little tack name in there. That is optional. I don't have to put category in there if I don't want to. In this situation, if I change that. If I want to use category, category is not in brackets, and thereby I must use the tack category. So let's show that. This should work. I've never tried this. We'll see if it doesn't blow up on me. Concept, if I go get help, one of the cool things you can do is you can put a little tack symbol, then you can tap. And it will give you all of those little things we were just talking about. There's the name, there's the path, the detailed. We have a whole bunch of different options. What was that very first? It said name. I'm going to this time put it in there, .name, and then I'm going to do get help. I get back the exact same results as I did the first time. So you can do this dash name was identical to the previous one I wrote up here, get help, get help. It wasn't required because the parameter name is in brackets. But you do need it. I wrote here, get help. I can also see that based off this, if I just write get help, I don't actually need to write anything. This came back with context. And why did that, how did I know it was going to give me something back? Sorry, let's write this again, get help. It told me right here, I don't have to put anything in there. Everything is in between these brackets. So no fields are required. Get help by itself will just run. But you can also use the tack name and put in a string. You can just put in a string like I did with just get help, ignoring not putting that parameter in. Let's go. This is where we'll see what happens. I'm curious if I do get help string, and then I say I only want to get back categories of commandlets. I bet that'll work. So I'm going to go get help, and we're going to do star. That's my string. I could choose to put name in, choose not to. And now I want to use category. Category is remember they come in pairs. Here's your field name, here's your values. The field name is not in brackets. This one is not. So if I want to use this, I'm going to have to use tack category. I'm going to have to call it out. So I'm going to do TAC category. And the cool thing is if I tab complete, again, it gives me all the options. Right after I wrote category, it'll tell me here's all those categories you can use. I'm going to put Cmdlet. And again, tab complete. Don't write all these things out. I'm going to assume what I get back are nothing but Cmdlets. Yep, these are all Cmdlets. So you can filter and stuff by things like that. So anyway, just if I want to use other fields like that, I'm going to have to, I need to put them in there. Let's do another one. Get help. This time I'm going to do get process. Get process, we can read it. It's a gets the processes they're running on the computer. This one is, okay, so if I want to run get process, let's look at the parameters. The first thing that comes back, remember they come in pairs, name, system string, in brackets. The pair are in brackets. So that would tell you that you don't need to put this parameter in there. You do not need to call out either one of these fields. They're not required. File version info, not required. Module, not required. Common parameters, not required. So get process can run on its own, or I can put a name in and put a system string. But this parameter name is in brackets itself, so I don't even have to put TAC name in there if I don't want to. So let's try all those. If I do get process, I get back results. I can do get process, and I can use name, and I'm going to put watchdog D. I'm just going to grab this one right here. Actually, let's keep it really simple. I shouldn't be able to misspell that. VLC. If that works, I got the process back for VLC. I use name. Remember, if we look at our get help, get process, I don't have to use TAC name, so I could actually do get process and just write VLC. All of those are legit, and that makes things a whole lot easier. So that's the process of reading this syntax. It takes a little bit of effort as we start to introduce new commandlets. I'll walk you through a few of them so you get to understand them, but this really helps you understand how to use it. And you can see here's your online documentation if you want to click it. One of the sad things, at least for on my Ubuntu instance, I am not having much success. So I've just, if I want to do it, I've got to copy this and paste it. I can go online and find out how to use this commandlet. But this is one of the things that is nice in window is working in Windows. I can say get process, and there is a command called online. If I use that TAC online, I'm hoping that's showing up. The color's not perfect on this with screen recording. This will actually fire open my web browser and take me to the latest documentation on it. It's not working on my Ubuntu box. I actually have to copy and paste this related link, but it's still there. The other one is the way they put this, get help shows you the minimal information in the documentation, then there are full. And so, for example, if I want to get the get help, get process full, that'll give me even more documentation, and that opens up even more things to look at. And it still starts out with, up at the top, get process, synopsis, the syntax, gives a little more of a description, and then it's going to walk through all of these parameters. You want to know what a file version info is? Here's the description. Is it required? Required would tell you you need to use it. Well, you notice file versions in brackets, thereby not required. Is it positional? Positional means, we'll talk about positional parameters in a different time, but basically the principle is if you don't use a name, you can put them in based off order, and it's not positional. You need to call out the name if you want to use file version, and you'll know that because you can only have positional requirements if they're required. None of these parameters are required. See this get process ID? That actually is positional. This ID field, and you notice it is positional. And anyway, it's required, you want to use it. Point is, position is how you can, which order the tags have to come into. If you call out all your tags, you don't have to worry about it. Is there a default value associated with this file version? Does it accept pipeline wildcard characters? We'll discuss that later. But basically, you can walk down every filled parameter name you find here and get an understanding of what it does. Then a little further, you can actually get examples. So here are examples. If I want to get a list of all active processes on my computer, I can just type get process. If I want to get a list of all my processes for a particular thing, such as, notice here, they actually use get process. Looks like you can take more than one um, command in there, and it's showing that. I want to get back everything with WinWord and Explorer. And so it'll give you examples how to use that. Really quite nice. There's formatting, so it's just got a whole bunch of great examples of how to use this command. And that is Get-Help in a nutshell. I hope it helps. Get-Help is a great tool. You should not try to figure out how to run PowerShell just by reading other people's code. Read the documentation, get an understanding of how commandlets work, and it'll ultimately, in the long run, pay off, and you'll understand PowerShell much better. I hope this helps. If it does, please, and you like this video, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you find this useful, and I hope you'll come back and watch other videos in this list of videos I'm putting together for PowerShell.